The Colorado River is the lifeblood of the American Southwest, carving its way through arid canyons and vast deserts, shaping the land and the people who depend on it. For centuries, its waters have been a source of hope and survival in a region where rainfall is scarce and the sun is relentless. Today, the river provides drinking water for over 40 million people across 7 states, quenching the thirst of bustling cities and remote communities alike. Every drop that flows from the Colorado is carefully managed, stored, and delivered to homes, businesses, and schools, making modern life possible in places where it otherwise wouldn't exist. Without it, cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Los Angeles would barely exist. These urban centers, now icons of the American West, owe their very existence to the river's steady flow, which supports millions of residents and fuels economic growth. Its power turns turbines at Hoover Dam, keeping millions of homes lit and businesses running. The electricity generated here doesn't just power local communities, it reaches far beyond, supporting entire regions with clean, renewable energy. The river irrigates over 5 million acres of farmland, making the desert bloom and feeding the nation. Fields of green stretch across the arid landscape, transforming what was once barren into some of the most productive farmland in the country. From winter lettuce to summer melons, much of our food traces back to these waters. The produce grown here fills grocery stores and dinner tables across America, connecting families everywhere to the river's life-giving flow. Beyond people, the river sustains vital habitats for countless species in an otherwise harsh landscape. Lush riverbanks provide refuge for birds, fish, and mammals, creating a ribbon of life through the desert that supports biodiversity and balances fragile ecosystems. Yet, our entire way of life was built on the assumption that the river would always flow as it did during an unusually wet period a century ago. Early settlers and planners couldn't have foreseen the challenges of a changing climate and growing demand. That overconfidence set the stage for today's crisis, a river stretched beyond its limits. Now, as droughts intensify and populations swell, the Colorado is pushed to the brink, struggling to meet the needs of all who rely on it. When the Colorado falters, it's not just a local problem, it's a national emergency. The fate of millions and the future of the American West hangs in the balance, reminding us that the river's story is, in many ways, our own. The Colorado River, once a mighty lifeline for the American West, is shrinking faster than anyone expected, its flow diminished by a combination of relentless drought, rising temperatures, and decades of overuse. The evidence of this crisis is stark and undeniable at Lake Mead and Lake Powell, 2 of the largest reservoirs in the country, now at record lows, their shorelines receding further each year. Since 2000, Lake Mead's water level has dropped by over 60%, exposing ghostly white bathtub rings on canyon walls, silent markers of water that once was, and a visual reminder of how much has been lost. The crisis now threatens the very infrastructure that made the West possible. Hydropower at Hoover and Glen Canyon dams is at risk. If water drops below dead pool, turbines will stop, and millions could lose both water and electricity, impacting cities, farms, and industries across the region. The original Colorado River Compact, signed a century ago, promised more water than the river can provide, allocating 16 million acre-feet when the real flow is closer to 12. This overestimation set the stage for today's crisis, as states and cities built their futures on water that never truly existed. For years, massive reservoirs masked the growing deficit, acting as a buffer against dry years. But now, with those reserves nearly depleted, the safety net is gone, and the shortage is exposed for all to see. States are scrambling to negotiate new rules before a 2026 deadline, facing the reality that everyone, farmers, cities, and entire industries, must use less water. The stakes are high and the negotiations are tense, as no one wants to bear the brunt of the cuts. The question isn't if cuts are coming, but how deep they'll be, and who will bear the burden. Farmers worry about their crops and livelihoods, while cities debate how to ration water for millions of residents. Every drop now counts more than ever. The river's bank account is overdrawn, and the consequences are impossible to ignore. Fish and wildlife suffer, communities face tough choices, and the landscape itself is being transformed by scarcity. The old system is broken, urgent change is no longer optional. Infrastructure built for a wetter era is failing, and new solutions are desperately needed to adapt to a drier future. The crisis has turned a slow-moving problem into an immediate emergency, forcing communities, leaders, and families to confront the reality that the Colorado River can no longer meet all our demands. The time for action is now. The Colorado's decline starts in the Rockies, where the river is born from snow and ice high in the mountains. These peaks, once blanketed in thick, glistening snow, have always been the river's lifeblood, feeding it drop by drop as the seasons change. But now, the culprit is heat, relentless, intensifying heat that bakes the landscape and disrupts the delicate balance that sustained the river for centuries. For every degree Celsius of warming, the river's flow drops by nearly 10%, a measured reality, not a theory. This means that even small increases in temperature have outsized impacts on the river's ability to sustain life and communities downstream. The snowpack, once the river's true reservoir, is melting earlier and faster, with more precipitation falling as rain instead of snow. This shift means less water is stored for the dry months ahead, and the river's flow becomes more unpredictable. Dark, exposed ground absorbs more heat, causing even more water to evaporate before it reaches the river. The land itself becomes a sponge for the sun's energy, accelerating the loss of precious moisture. Scientists call this aridification, a permanent shift to a hotter, drier climate, not just a temporary drought. It's a transformation that's changing the very character of the West. The past 2 decades have been among the driest in over 1,000 years, driven by human-caused climate change. The difference is stark. What was once a lush, thriving river valley is now a landscape marked by scarcity and struggle. The atmosphere is thirstier, pulling moisture from soil, plants, and snow. Every living thing along the river feels the strain, from ancient cottonwoods to the smallest insects. The river isn't shrinking just from less precipitation, but because more water is vanishing into thin air. Evaporation is now a powerful, invisible force, stealing water before it can nourish the land. Researchers are racing to understand these changes, tracking every drop and studying how the river's fate is tied to our warming planet. The slow, reliable melt that once powered the system is breaking down. Now, snow disappears in a rush, leaving the river starved later in the year. The river's crisis is a direct result of a warming world. Our choices today will determine whether the Colorado can recover or if this decline becomes our new normal. More heat means less water, plain and simple. The story of the Colorado is a warning and a call to action for us all. In early 2025, President Trump froze over $4 billion in federal funding meant to save the Colorado River. The money was paying farmers, cities, and tribes to use less water, keeping more in the river and stabilizing reservoirs. The sudden halt shocked the Southwest, threatening fragile coalitions and undoing years of progress. Farmers who agreed to fallow fields now face uncertainty, and critical habitat and wildfire prevention projects are at risk. Experts warn these aren't woke projects. They're essential for economic and social stability. The funding pause undermines the cooperation needed for a new water-sharing deal by 2026. The region's strategy to keep water in the reservoirs is now in jeopardy. Political turmoil has turned a climate crisis into a crisis of governance. The Colorado River crisis hits home, literally. California's Imperial Valley, America's winter salad bowl, relies almost entirely on the river. Water shortages mean less food and higher prices nationwide. Cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas, built on the promise of endless water, now face tough choices: strict conservation, higher bills, and limits on growth. The recreation economy, rafting, fishing, boating, suffers as water levels drop, hurting local businesses. Dying cottonwood forests and a vanishing delta spell disaster for wildlife, including endangered birds. The river's decline is a stark reminder. Our well-being is tied to healthy ecosystems. When the river suffers, so do we. The crisis ripples through food, cities, economies, and nature. We are not separate from the river's fate. Its health is our health. The Colorado River has always been shaped by dramatic change. During the Ice Age, glaciers and ancient lakes carved the landscape, shifting the river's course and creating massive floods. The relative stability of the 20th century was an anomaly, a rare wet period in a history of extremes. Geological records show the river has endured megadroughts far worse than today's. The lesson? The river is not static, and rapid change is the norm. Today's aridification, driven by climate change, is another major transformation. We can't assume the patterns of the recent past will continue. The river's history warns us. We must be ready for sudden, profound shifts. Scientists are sounding the alarm. Without immediate action, the Colorado River faces severe consequences. Rising temperatures mean less water, and the risk of reservoirs hitting dead pool is real, threatening water and power for millions. Black swan events like a permanent megadrought are becoming more likely as the climate warms. The freeze on conservation funding is a reckless gamble, removing a critical buffer at the worst possible time. Managing the river demands long-term thinking and cooperation, not sudden political shifts. The era of an endlessly abundant river is over. We must rethink how we use and value water in the West. That means accelerating conservation, helping farmers adapt, and finalizing a realistic water-sharing agreement. The window to act is closing fast. The cost of inaction is a future no one wants. The path forward is clear, if challenging. Use less water, increase supply, and manage smarter. Cities must replace lawns with desert landscaping, fix leaks, and use efficient appliances. Every drop saved matters. Agriculture, the biggest user, can switch to drip irrigation and less thirsty crops, with support for farmers to adapt. Paying farmers to fallow land is a flexible tool for dry years, not a punishment. Water recycling and reuse are proven solutions, already expanding in places like Southern California. Desalination is an option for coastal areas, though costly and complex. No single fix will solve the crisis, but a diversified approach can. Above all, a new water-sharing agreement, based on science and the reality of a smaller river, is essential. It will require sacrifice and compromise from all. Only then can we ensure the river's future. Even if you live far from the Colorado, its fate matters to you. The river's crisis is a preview of global water challenges in a warming world. Our food supply, economy, and national stability are all connected to its flow. Disruption in the Southwest ripples across the country, affecting jobs, prices, and supply chains. The Colorado is a test of our ability to solve complex problems together. Can we act on science, cooperate, and manage shared resources wisely? Caring about the river is caring about our shared future. Its story is our story, and its future is in our hands. By investing in solutions and demanding action, we can keep this vital river flowing for generations.